what do you actually think shows more strength? Hiding your emotion or having emotions? Who's actually stronger, right? It's actually the weak person that hides their emotions because they're afraid of how they're going to be viewed. That is weakness. Strength is embracing your emotions and letting people see them, right? Because that's strength, because you aren't afraid of how you'll be judged. And that actually builds more connection.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the 5onCast, your sometimes weekly source for insights into whatever the hell is on my mind at the time. I'm your eternal, ever-burning co-host, Patrick Downs. Some may call me the modern Johnny Blaze. And today, I am joined by Kevin Dorsey. You all know him, the VP of Inside Sales at Patient Pop. I've titled today's episode, Welcome to the Dorscast, by the way. And this episode is going to be all about feelings, emotions, the gooey stuff inside of us that makes us tick. And Kevin, welcome to the show, man. Do you want to give some color to your introduction?
Man, let's rock. They can find me on LinkedIn. Like,
people know you.
Either they know me, or if they want to know me, they can go find me. You know, like I want to talk about the topic that we want to be here today, and I am not that topic.
You're one of the easiest persons to interview because, like, I can go and look at everything that you've ever thought. There's so much.
Well, it's funny though, and I've talked about this with people. It's also what is one of the things that lets me know what a dire strait a lot of like prospecting and things in the sales process are. It's because you can find stuff on me and people still send me templated emails and templated outreach, and you can find anything on me. And so if someone like me that is easy to find doesn't get good personalized outreach, then I know a lot of people aren't getting good personalized outreach because I'm easy to find, man. Probably too easy to find. I need to pull that shit back a little bit.
Well, the way with our processes are set up currently in sales, I mean, they probably don't even know they're reaching out to you. That's the problem.
Okay, funny story. So I took a cold call. This was 2 weeks ago, and I could tell that the SDR or A, whoever it was surprised I'd answered, right? So first I was like, hello. And they're like, oh, hi, is this Kevin? I was like, here we go. Yes. Now, they were selling data. And they said, do you have 45 seconds, to like hear what we do? I'm like, sure, go for it. Right. Like I'll go salesperson to salesperson here. And he gives the pitch and goes, like, could we set up a time next week? Or is this something like you'd be interested in? I was like, do you know what industry I target? Do you know what industry I target? And he goes, when I was first starting to reach out, I did, but off the top of my head, I don't. Like, I just know, like, you're super well respected, in the industry and da 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 da. And I was like, all right, man, like, if you don't know what industry I target, how can you even ask me if I'm interested in this? Go find out what industry I target, and then find out if your company can actually help me with that, and then you can reach back out to me, right? But he didn't even know what industry I was targeting. He didn't even know like what I sold into, but was trying to sell me data. And I was like, come on, man. Like, and I was cordial about it and I was respectful, right? But I was like, dude, like, you should know better. Like, you should know better, especially if you're coming after me. Like, you should know, right? And it's crazy, man. Like, know who you're targeting. Come on.
It's also kind of in the name. I mean, Patient Pop. Think about that for a second.
That's
Patients,
not hard.
Medical. Okay.
that's not a hard thing to do, but oh well, it is what it is.
I mean, that's two things, right? It's like, that's preparation and also how people feel on a call, right? Because he was probably super nervous and taken off guard. So he wasn't mentally prepared to deal with that conversation.
Right. And that's why the mental prep has to come before the call, right? You take that deep breath, you look at your notes, you picture who you're about to call, you picture maybe what some of those questions could be, and then you go, right? Don't set yourself up, right? All right, you're afraid. And this is like, so everyone talks about what fear does to people, right? They talk about the 2 F's, fight or flight. Those are 2 of the F's. The most common F, though, is freeze. People freeze. They don't fight. They don't flight. They freeze. They do nothing when they get afraid, right? I actually wish more people had fight reflexes to fear, right? Because if you were afraid to lose your job, if you were afraid to not make money and you were fighting, right, you would fight to make sure that fear went away. But instead, most people freeze under fear. And that's where they get into trouble, is they do nothing. They sit in that fear, and then they wonder why it never goes away.
What does fight look like in that kind of situation?
Well, it can go two ways. You can either, more often not, fight will cause you to try to get rid of the thing that is scaring you, right? So if you're fighting, you fight the thing you're afraid of, right? That's a fight reflex. So if you're afraid of making cold calls, you would fight that, right? You would tackle it, you would charge at it, you develop the skill set, you would, because you're afraid, you would get good at it. Because you're afraid of it, you're like, all right, I'm going to tackle this head on, right? I'm going to fight this, right? It's one of the reasons why I got good at prospecting, is because I hated prospecting, right? And it's like, people seem to forget this. The better you are at it, the less you have to do, right? So I got good at it because I didn't want to have to do a lot of it. If you got to make 100 calls and I can get good at it and make 50 calls, I'd rather do that. That's fighting it. But instead, people, they freeze in it, right? And they avoid it, which then only causes more fear, And now you get into that cycle, right? Where you're afraid to do that thing because you're not good at it, but you're not good at it because you don't do that thing. And now you're in this cycle of fear. And then people flight. Sales wasn't right for me. Or, oh, I wasn't passionate about the product. Or, oh, leadership this, leadership that. It's like, did you fight? Like, did you fight for what you wanted in terms of your career? If not, you left something on the table.
I think fear is such a powerful emotion, and in general, it speaks to how often people in sales don't confront their emotions. I mean, even me as a leader, people won't be doing things, and I'll understand, just because I'm a human being, that they're probably not doing it because they're scared of something, whether that be failure or that they don't know how to do it or something like that. And then you kind of have to uncover it, but they obviously don't feel comfortable telling leadership a lot of the time, unless the relationship is really strong.
Mm-hmm. And that starts with leadership, right? Like sharing your fears, sharing your emotions, right? A lot of the leaders, including myself early on as a leader, like, we're afraid to show vulnerability, right? Because we think it'll make us look weak, right? But then I can't remember which book it was in, but talked about, what do you actually think shows more strength? Hiding your emotion or having emotions? Who's actually stronger, right? It's actually the weak person that hides their emotions because they're afraid of how they're going to be viewed. That is weakness. Strength is embracing your emotions and letting people see them, right? Because that's strength, because you aren't afraid of how you'll be judged. And that actually builds more connection with your people, because they, one, can trust you more, right? And two, everyone has vulnerabilities. When you pretend you don't, you're like, all right, like, they're not like us, right? They're different. And so showing emotion, showing fears, showing insecurities, admitting when you're wrong, right? That type of stuff matters to people, right? Whether it's a leader to rep, but then also rep to leader. Like, I pull things out of my reps sometimes, right? Ask them the triple question. Hey, how are you doing? I'm good. Okay, but like, for real, how are you doing? You know, I'm hanging in there. All right, let's go. Talk to me for real. How are you doing? Boom, right? Just then it all comes out, right? But you have to be willing to go there with your people. And a lot of managers and leaders don't. They ask that first question, how are you doing? And the rep goes, I'm good. And they go, okay, great. Let's talk about your pipeline. You missed a chance.
Especially right now, if somebody says they're doing great, there's got to be something behind that. Like, that things might be service level okay in that moment, but they're not doing great all the time.
But just like sales, though, ask why.
Yeah.
I'm great. Hell yeah. Why? Like what has you feeling great right now? Well, you know, right? And it can fall apart there. Or it can be like, you know what? I'm really proud of what I did this week. Hell yeah. I'm proud of you too. Like, why do you think this week made you feel differently than last? Like, it's just like selling, right? I just had this conversation it's actually funny, with my team and with my managers. So we have been taking too strong of a logic-based approach with our sale over the past like 4 months, right? And a lot of reps and a lot of teams do this, right? Where it's like, okay, patient pop can make you more money. You want more money, Here's how we make you more money. Here's the ROI on our product. Buy Patient Pop. Right? And it's all logic and it all makes a lot of sense. And people will buy it because of those things. But we were skipping the emotional side, and the emotional side has to be there, especially when the environment is emotional, right? Our country is emotional right now. There is a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of apprehension. There's a lot of uncertainty, right? And so if you skip the emotional side in the sale, you miss out on that, and you wonder why people aren't closing the way that they used to, right? Why do they want more money? Why do they want more patients? What would change for them? How would they spend it? How would that make them feel? What would it look like if they were number one? How do they feel about the competition? Like pulling the emotion out and pulling that in. But then I had to have the same conversation with my managers, where they were also taking a very logic-based approach to leadership with their reps right now, and they're missing some of those conversations. If you want to hit quota, go make your calls. And if you hit quota, you make more money. Go get it. It's like, no. That also doesn't get people to change behavior. I'll give you exactly a conversation I had with one of my managers. I said, okay, like, rep is kind of struggling. I said, all right, like, let's back up here. What's their goal? What's their goal? What do they want to achieve? They want to hit quota. I said, okay, that's their goal. That's their goal. I said, yes. Okay. So why do they want to hit quota? Well, they want to make money. I was like, how much money do they want to make? They want to make $150,000. I said, so you realize hitting quota doesn't get them $150,000 though, right? So there's already something off. I was like, oh, I was like, why do they want $150,000? Well, they want, lifestyle. What does that mean? Well, like the apartment, like I kept digging. I was like, when's the last time you talked about any of that stuff? When's the last time you talked about what it would mean to hit quota, how she'd feel if she hit quota? Because also, too, by the way, hitting quota doesn't match up to what you said her income goal is. So when's the last time you talked about that, right? And pulling the emotion out of this, too, because you can't just lead with logic. We are not logical creatures at all, right? We are very emotional creatures. I was reminded of a study recently. I'm listening to a really good book right now called Buddha and the Badass, and it brought up a really interesting study that I forgot about. It's like, I think it's the amygdala, the part of your brain that regulates emotion. If it's damaged, people can't make decisions. Go look this up. It is amazing. They can explain what decisions should be made. They can walk you through the steps of why it should be that decision, but when it comes to making the decision, they can't. If the emotional side of the brain is too damaged, it's amazing, right? But we forget that in sales. We forget that, and we need to bring that back.
I'm hearing a lot of people in VP positions and director positions talking about management style recently and getting more in touch with what people actually want and how they're feeling. Was that happening for you before COVID hit? Is that something you've always focused on?
Yeah. I don't want to say always, because I've grown as a leader. Like when I was first leading, I would say no. I was much more like, I would say a pusher than a puller, right? Just like pushing people to go do more versus pulling people in and along and for their reasons. But yeah, I've focused on people for a while now. Like we were doing meditation and visualization as a team long before this happened. We were doing goal setting and things like that long before all this started going down. Now we just have to do more of it, right? Like we really have to double down on it. And it was also easier in the office. It was so much easier in the office, right? You could get a vibe, you could get a feel, you could grab someone for lunch, right? You could go grab a coffee. Someone could be struggling and it's like, hey, walk with me, let's go. Right? Someone could get a deal, right? Like I'm a hugger, a high fiver, and a fist bumper, right? Like that's not there anymore. I was talking with a rep just yesterday and she said, it's so different. Like even when I close a deal, I'm closing a deal on my couch, and I look to my left and I look to my right and there's no one there. And like, yeah, like the Slack notifications go, but it's not the same. Like we're missing that social connection right now. So no, I mean, I've been pretty big on people for a while now. Now it's just a whole new animal. It's just trying to figure out how to do it when I can't be there with them.
I'm curious what the initial catalyst was. Why did you make that original change towards more like emotion, feeling, goal?
Well, you said it before. I think it came from asking myself better questions, right? Okay. Why are they not doing what they need to do? Right? So that's the first question. And then most leaders, you know how they answer that? Why aren't they doing it? They don't have work ethic. They're not working hard enough. Okay. So one of my mentors told me this one time, and I loved it. He said, throw away your first two answers and keep going. Right. So if you ask the question of like, well, why are the reps not succeeding? And you say, well, they're not working hard enough. And you throw that answer away. It's like, and then it's like, well, why aren't they doing it? It's like, well, you know, they're lazy. Okay. Throw that answer away. Okay. If those two things don't exist, why are they not doing it? Well, now you start getting into, well, maybe they don't know how. Do they know how to do it? Okay, they do know how to do it. They do know how to do it. So why are they still not doing it? They know the how. Why not? If you know how to do something, what's the only reason why you wouldn't do it? You know how to do something the right way. Why wouldn't you do it? Well, that's when you start getting into fear. That's when you start getting into insecurity. Why wouldn't you do it if you knew it would be successful? Maybe they don't believe it. They know how, but they don't like you. So you just start asking better questions of yourself and go, well, wait a minute. Maybe they are afraid to do it. What are things that address fear? Well, practice helps address fear. Vulnerable conversations help address fear. Meditation helps address fear. Visualization practices help address fear. Allowing people to fail helps address fear, right? And so it was asking better questions. My team, and my managers especially know this, very rarely do I ever talk work ethic with my team because work ethic is a feeling. Everyone feels like they're working hard. Everyone feels like they're working hard, right? Go pull your team. I could pull my team's like, yo, raise your hand if you're not working hard right now, right? They're like, no one will raise their hand because it's a feeling, right? But efficiency is different and how they feel, right? Almost everything comes back to feelings, man. So I think that's what triggered it, was starting to ask myself better questions and understand that it almost all led to emotions.
Yeah, and those are the maybe lower level emotions on the scale of, hey, I'm afraid to discuss this too. So I think building a culture around even those more intense emotions is important because then stuff like fear of failure becomes easier to discuss. So we had talked a little bit about this off recording, but your dog had recently passed away, and like I've had a couple people around me in my company that have had people pass away recently. And it's so awkward because we know we should talk about it because like we're family with the people we work with, but we don't a lot of the time, or some people feel uncomfortable with it. So how do you personally address grief in a professional setting?
I think the first is expressing it, right? And I can give, I mean, unfortunately, there's been too many examples of grief this year for me, but I'll back up all the way when we went through layoffs at Patient Pop, and I was heartbroken, like heartbroken. And my team knew that when I had to call them all in, explain like what happened, like visually I shed a tear in front of my team in terms of like the grief I was feeling on the fact that we had to go through that. So the first was expressing the grief of like, this does hurt. This hurts me as a person. Yes, this is business, but damn it, this hurts. Right. And I got so many messages after that of like, thank you for that. Right. Because it's a way of showing that you care. Right. So it's expressing that grief. Right. Losing my dog. Right. Like I reached out to my managers and said, hey, like, I'm going to need you right now. Like, I need you right now. I'm going to be leaning on you right now because I'm going through something that really hurts. It hurts. Right. And asking for that support and being willing to do it, but also getting ahead of it too. So like with my directors, I said, look, and this was like coming into this week, is like, I am pretty emotionally exhausted right now, which can cause me to maybe be too overbearing or a little bit snappier than I should be. If you see it happening, call me on it. Like if you see me coming in too hard, if you see me like pressing in places that I shouldn't press because like I'm just emotionally spent, tell me, right? So first it's just expressing that grief, but being willing to lean on other people, right? There's this idea that like as leaders, we need to be like perfect or stoic or never have these emotions, versus like the amount of people on my team and even at my company that reached out and said, yo, like, I'm here if you need me. yo, I went through this too, and that was awful, right? Versus I could have just kept it to myself. I could have just like hid it. I could have pretended everything was fine, just took in a couple days off. But it's just expressing that grief and saying, hey, like I'm going through some shit right now and it's hurting, right? So I think that's another big area with grief is expressing it, but then also taking the time, right? And I don't even know. Actually, I would say I probably haven't even taken enough time to really process some of the shit that's happened this year, which is why I think it can also bubble up to a point of like, okay, you actually then have to take a break, right? You want to take a break before you have to take a break. Once you have to, it's already too late, right? And you barely recover from that break. So it's also taking time and hopefully working for a company that gets that, right? Where it's like, hey, like take a day, take 2 days, take as much time as you need to get back to the mental state that you need to, and you go from there.
Yeah, it's so important, especially when we could talk about this theoretically. I've been hearing a lot of people talking about actual mental illness too, on top of the mental health struggles that you get from like an external force. But there's also the internal illness that can occur. And I've actually run into this as a leader recently. Is I have bipolar 2 and a couple other disorders. And since I've been speaking out about it, I've had people coming to me and talking to me about it. People that I've known for years going, I actually struggle with that same thing, or things that are worse. So in your experience in leadership, like how are people reacting to actual mental illness, and how do you personally deal with it in a professional setting?
So I guess there's the goods and bads right now in the industry. The good is that people are starting to talk about it, right? There's always just been this idea like salespeople are different in some way. We're not. We're human beings, just like everybody else. We have the same emotions. We have a lot of the same fears, same insecurities, same mental issues as anybody out there, right? And so at least now it's starting to be talked about, because I think for a long time it was just swept under the rug, right? Because sales has this like machismo attitude, right? Of like, go, 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 grind, 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 tough, tough, tough. Like you can't have an issue. That's weak, right? Now people are at least starting to talk about it, which is a huge step forward. And encouraging people to talk about it, right? And we bring this up in, you know, some of our team meetings, like, yo, like if you're struggling, reach out, please reach out, whether that's to your manager or to me directly, right? Or like telling a rep so a rep can reach out to get resources. Go to HR, like please don't sit in it alone. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to, right? And then being able to give people resources, you know, to go and try to get help, because I think a lot of managers too, a lot of leaders, they don't know how. Who taught you how to help a bipolar employee? Who taught you how to help an employee who lost their father? Who taught you how to help an employee whose best friend OD'd? I've never gone through an HR training like that. It doesn't exist, right? So then a lot of managers, they dismiss it, right? Because they don't know what to do, right? And so we have to also, I think, start injecting it into leadership training of like how to not know, like be therapists, but in a way, leadership is a lot of therapy, like in a lot of ways, but we need to be taught on how to do it the right way, right? And so like when I'm dealing with it with team members, almost always it's first just listening, not trying to solve, just listen. And really listen and ask more questions and help them talk through it and go through it. Then it's getting permission to help. Hey, I have maybe some ideas, some reasons here. Like, could I offer some advice here? Because sometimes too, like people, they don't want advice. Well, some of the best things you could do is just listen, right? Just hear them out and they feel heard, right? And then it's like, okay, like here's some resources, or here are people that I also know have gone through this that I could put you in touch with, right? Or here is a great book or a great seminar or a great course. Like, but then when it gets serious, it's like, yo, like I'll drive you to a clinic. And I have done that. I have picked an employee up from their home and driven them to a clinic. I have gone to AA meetings with a team member before, right? Like that's the kind of stuff that you have to be willing to do, right? When you see them struggling, going like, I'm here. I'm just going to be here. We don't have to talk. I'm not going to tell anybody, but I'm here with you, right? You have to. It's so important.
Yeah, nobody ever gave anyone training for that, right?
Right. Right.
That's
like,
wild.
but then again, back to the, circling back, why would a lot of leaders not do that? Fear. They're afraid. They are afraid. Why? Of what? Well, what if I say it wrong? Or even to the point of, and this, HR sometimes can go too far, but HR telling leaders not to have these conversations. Send them over to HR. That rep may have no relationship with someone in HR, and now they're being asked to have a meeting. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's something that needs to start being drilled into leadership on how to have these conversations. What are the resources, right? Even as I'm talking through this, I'm realizing, do my managers know all the resources that are out there? Like, we talk about these things, but does my manager know what to do if they pick up on the signs of a substance abuse problem? Like, even as I'm talking, like, this is me and I'm talking out loud, I'm going, shit. No, I bet you my own managers don't have a strong pulse on that. And it's going to be something that I'm going to address next week, even talking through this, because people are struggling right now. People are struggling right now, and we have to try to help the person through it. That's the only way we can get sales to where it needs to be, is we have to get our people through this right now. People are having a hard time.
Love that. That's funny you bring that up, because I wouldn't know how to deal with somebody with a substance abuse problem. I'm sure it's going to happen if it hasn't already happened and I just haven't noticed.
Well, that's the noticing, right? Do you even know what to pick up on, right? And those are some of the things that can come from experience, right? If you're paying attention. But if you're not paying attention, right? If it's all surface level, hey, how's it going? Good. And like, you're not picking up on the bags under the eyes. You're not picking up on the changes of emotion. You're not picking up on the strong peaks and valleys, right? You're not picking up on patterns of when they seem to be late or when they, like, if you pick up on those things, you go, oh, wow, something might be going on here. How can I help?
I think that's a good place to end. I appreciate you, Kevin. What is the best place for people to connect with you right now?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Kevin Dorsey. Look me up there. Unfortunately, I'm at that stupid 30,000 connection limit. So give me a follow, shoot me a note, and I'll do my best to get back to you and help in any way. And anyone listening, like, I can be a resource, for these things, but please, if you are struggling, reach out and get help. There is no shame in that. That is actually where your strengths lie. It's avoiding help that is the weakness. Getting help is a strength. So reach out, look up resources, talk to a therapist, talk to someone. You don't have to go through any of this alone. So please just take action to find help.
100%. And on that same note, I reached out to an organization called NAMI when I was having a really hard time, when my mom was struggling as well. And they were huge. And I don't know what I would do if I didn't have that resource. So I'd recommend it. If you go to nami.org/find support, you'll be able to find a local chapter. And also there's a lot of online counseling right now, like BetterHelp, where if you can't go physically see a therapist or find one locally, there's people online that are licensed that can help you. But always feel free to reach out to either of us, I think it sounds like. And thank you guys so much for listening. This is, again, Patrick Downs. I sometimes refer to myself as the modern day Rod Serling. I can only hope. And you've been listening to the Dorsey Cast. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and see you soon.